This code decided wars, and breaking it saved millions of lives. In 1940, this machine in Germany was thought to be unbreakable. But today, it doesn't look like this. It looks more like this. And now I am going to tell you the story of Enigma Cipher, how it was created, how it was broken, and how I recreated it today from scratch after almost 90 years. Before we dive into explore what exactly was Enigma Cipher, I am going to give you a crash course in cryptography. If you already know what is cryptography, feel free to skip it and jump directly to the story. For the others, let's consider that you want to send this message to someone. However, the message is top secret and you don't want the enemies to find out what it says. You are going to hide it cleverly, but the enemies are going to search every messenger that walks past their area, and there's a risk that it would be found. Therefore, in order to keep the message secret, you came up with a plan. You are going to replace each letter with another letter, like replacing A with D, replacing T with F, replacing A with D again, then replacing C with E, then replacing K with P, and you got the idea. And once a message is complete, you would be able to send it through any enemy's territory, and even if they capture it, they would not be able to tell what it means. Therefore, now you can send this message, and the enemy might capture it, it might not reach your supporters, but even then, there is no risk of the enemy discovering what it means. But even though only your friend knows how to decrypt this message, there is a very complicated and technical process that the enemy can use to read the message even after you encrypt it by using a process called frequency analysis, which basically means to count the number of times each letter appears. And now, since A appears only 3 times, but C appears like 27 times, you can consider that C is probably E, B, which occurs 25 times, is A, and then probably K, which, oh, sorry, I mean that O, which occurs 38 times, is probably E, then P, which occurs 31 times, is probably A, and with some trial and error, you would be able to uncover the actual message even though you have no idea how to decrypt it. Therefore, since the enemy was able to come up with the decryption of their messages, Germans invented this. This is a simplified form of Enigma machine. What basically happens is that when you press the A key, it goes through this thing called a scrambler, which converts this A to another letter. In this example, if you press the B key, this is going to go through the scrambler and the A is going to light up, which means that B is converted to A. This seems like what we just did, except that after you have pressed the B button, that scrambler over here is going to rotate, and now B maybe encrypts as C instead. If you press the B button 3 times, this is going to give you 3 different letters, and this improves the security. But even then, Germans believed that it wasn't secure enough, therefore, they came up with this idea. Basically, you have 2 different scramblers. By pressing B, you send it through the first one, which encrypts it as C, and then you send the C through the second one, which encrypts it as D, and now B is going to encrypt as D. And now only the first scrambler is going to rotate. And now B might encrypt as F, or it might encrypt as C. The second scrambler is only going to rotate once we have reached the end of this scrambler, and now this scrambler is going to rotate, and the second scrambler is going to rotate with it. This way, you wouldn't have a repetition until all 26 multiplied by 26 or 676 positions have passed and the first scrambler is back at its initial location. And even then, it wasn't secure enough. They didn't add a third scrambler, instead, they added 5 total scramblers. 3 scramblers would be attached to the machine, the remaining 2 will be held securely by the operator, and you couldn't even know which 3 were used in the machine. And even then, it wasn't complete, they had further work to do, and they decided to add something called a plug board. Basically, what this does is that it encrypts one letter to another letter. As an example, we might switch B to C, and then when we press B, instead of B, C is going to be sent through all those scramblers. And you had 10 of those cables, meaning you can swap 10 letters, then you would have 5 scramblers, out of which 3 are active at a moment, and the letter is going to go through all of this, and then it's going to hit something called a reflector. It's going to return, go back through the 3 scramblers once more, and finally, after all of this, the encrypted output will be displayed. Therefore, Germans bought over 30,000 of those machines to keep their communications secret. And there were 3 states that wanted to break that cipher. The first one were Americans, who wanted to break the cipher because they wanted to snoop on the Germans' communication. But when they realized how hard it was to crack, they were just like, well, that's not our business, we are going to leave that alone and let Germans do what they want. The next ones were French, and French people tried their best, but after some 6 months they gave up and never tried to crack it again. But the third one, a country which was much smaller than both America and France, and the country which managed to break Enigma Cipher, was Poland. And the reason they managed to break that cipher where companies more advanced and bigger than them failed, I believe that was because of fear. Poland was simply sandwiched between France and Germany. If Germany ever decided to expand, Poland would be simply sitting over the first ranks of their army. Therefore, they wanted to crack that cipher, they wanted to know what their German overlords were thinking about them, and they became the first one to crack the Enigma cipher. This is going to get incredibly technical. I am going to jump inside to how Germans use that cipher, how they utilize the machine, and how Polish people were able to analyze their messages and come up with the strategy to break the cipher. But just to note, Marian Rejewski cracked that cipher the first time. He wasn't some kind of genius or a super brilliant scientist. Instead, he was just a 27-year-old mathematician. He spent his entire life cracking that cipher, working on cryptanalysis of German communication, and half of his life was wasted. I mean that. All the time Marian spent trying to crack the cipher, the keys of that cipher, the ones required to decrypt that cipher securely, were tucked away inside the desk of their license. He kept the keys by himself because he wanted Marian to try cracking the cipher was himself. He was scared that if he gave him the keys, he would not be prepared for a time when those keys would not be available. He received those keys from his contacts inside the France, and even though much of Marianne's effort, might be redundant, he would forever be remembered as the man who broke Enigma code. Let's take a look at the working of Enigma machine. There are three things which are required to encrypt and decrypt a message properly. The first one is the actual scramblers you're going to use. You have got five different scramblers. You need to add only three of them and you need to know in which arrangement you are going to put them. Are you going to put the number third first, then number fourth, and then the number one? And or otherwise you might be putting number fifth first or something else. So the very first thing you need to know is the scrambler arrangement. If you don't know it, you would not be able to properly encrypt and decrypt any message with Enigma machine. The second thing you need to know is scrambler orientation. Basically, those scramblers have letters written on them. It's not clear in that image, but if you look clearly, you would be able to make out some letters written on the scramblers. You rotate those scramblers so a specific letter is facing the top, and in order to decrypt that message, you need to arrange the scrambler so that exact letter is facing the top. Therefore, you need to know the orientation of all three scramblers, otherwise you would not be able to decrypt a message. The third thing that you need to know is the placement of plug board. You are going to swap either 6 to 10 of different cables or 6 to 10 of different letters, and you need to know which letters you are going to swap. As an example, you might swap A by F, C by D, and any letters that you need to swap, this is going to form a part of your key. Therefore, you also need to know the plug board setting. These three things look a bit like this. First of all, you have the scrambler arrangement, which might look like 4, 2, 3. You're putting the fourth one first, then the second one. Remember, you have 5, but you're using only 3 of them. So you put the fourth one first, then the second one, and then the third one. Then you decided to maybe put Z for the first scrambler, then U for the second scrambler, and then P for the third scrambler. And finally, maybe you decided to use 6 of your cables and you decided to swap E by Y. You also decided to swap B by F. You decided to swap N by R. And similarly, you can swap all the remaining letters. And now, after putting in all those details, you would be able to properly encrypt and decrypt a message using Enigma Cipher. In order to encrypt a message, you are going to select the exact same key, put those three scramblers in, put those three letters at the top, and then attach cables to all those letters. And then you are going to start typing the letters using that keyboard, and that lamp board is going to display the letters by showing you lamps or lights upon the encrypted letter. For example, you press C and Y lights up, then you're going to write down Y because basically B is encrypted as Y. And now, after you have encrypted the entire message, you're going to send it to someone, and that person needs to select the exact same arrangement. They need to select the scrambler arrangement, they are going to select the scrambler orientation, and finally, they need to select the exact same plug board setting, and then they are going to type in Y, which lit up when we press B and we wrote down Y. Therefore, they are going to press Y and it's going to light up B. And now we are going to type an entire message and the decrypted message is going to light up. Now that part is a lot more complicated. Germans did something interesting. They could use the same key to encrypt all of their messages, but they decided to use a different key for each message to make it more secure. They had one key for a day. Let's consider that this is the key for today. And for the entire day, if they have to encrypt 1000 messages, they are going to create 1000 different keys for it. In order to do so, they are not going to change the scrambler arrangement. They are also not going to change the plugboard setting, but they are going to decide a new scrambler orientation. Let's say they decided to use C, F, and L. And now they are going to encrypt those three letters CFL by using this key. So they typed in CFL in the machine two times, twice because they didn't want it to make any mistake. They wanted to verify themselves. Therefore, they typed the message twice, CFL, CFL, which maybe resulted in something like LOK, RGM. The first LOK means CFL. The second RGM also means CFL, but remember that these scramblers are rotating. Therefore, it's going to encrypt as something else. And now they are going to first send this message. They are going to write down this LOK RGM, and then they are going to actually change the orientation to CFL, and then they are going to write their message maybe something like attack at night. Basically, that CFL is encrypted with this key, and this attack at night is encrypted with the same plugboard setting and the same arrangement but a different orientation. This way, they are creating different keys for each message, and this is a lot more secure than if they had used the same key for all the messages in the day. But in reality, this is way more insecure, and this is exactly how Polish people manage to break it. Let's see how. Basically, let's consider that you received those four messages, and you know that all those letters correspond to our keys. This LOK means CFL, this RGM also means CFL, but we don't know that because we don't have the key. Similarly, this MVT might mean something else. This XZE means the same thing. This might mean another scrambler orientation. This might mean another scrambler orientation. And since we don't have the key, we cannot break it and read what scrambler orientation they are using. But we know that this L and R are the same letters. They are encrypted differently because the scramblers are rotating. But when the message was written, those were same letters. Similarly, this O and G are the same letters, and this K and M are the same letters. So what Marian did was, since he knew that those two are the same letters, he wrote the first one in one line and then the second one in another line. Similarly, he wrote this M in the first line and then this X in the second line, and so on. This way, they created a complete dictionary of all letters for that day, which might look a bit like this. And they did something interesting. They looked at A, they saw that A was encrypted as F next, then they took F and then looked below F to find W, then they looked at W and found A below W to find A once more. And we are back where we started. Similarly, we can follow all the other letters, and after a few turns we are going to reach the letter where we started. And the cryptanalyst realized that there are simply two things which this chain, this A to F and then F to W, this chain relies on. which is scrambler arrangement and scrambler orientation. Basically, they looked at the length of all those chains. If we take B for example, this is going to go to Q, then Q will go to Z, which are 2 letters, then Z will go to K, which are 3 letters, then K went to V, 4 letters, V went to E, 5 letters, that went to L, 6 letters, then R went to I, 7 letters, and then it went to B, and the B forms a chain of 8 letters. They realized that the plug board that we learned about does not impact the length of those chains. And the proof of this is quite complicated, but just understand that even if we replace F by A in the chain, for example, the complete chain is going to run like before, nothing is going to change. And even if you keep swapping letters inside that plug board, the length of those chains are going to remain the same. And the thing is, well, let me show you this. Basically, this shows the number of keys each component of the Enigma contributes to. If you have too few keys, if you have like 1000 keys, someone would be able to sit and try out all 1000 keys and the message would be broken easily. Enigma machine has over 100 trillion keys, which means that if you can try out one key per second and you work day and night without stopping or taking a rest, it would take more time than known age of universe to crack that cipher. But the number of keys comes from this. First of all, you have 3 scramblers. Each can be set into one of 26 orientations, therefore they result in about 17,000 different keys. Then you have 6 different arrangements, which results in about 100 million different keys. And finally, oops, sorry, I slipped that here. Basically, the 3 scramblers, which can be arranged in different orders, will result in 17,576 keys, and the plug board, which allows us to swap 6 different letters, is going to result in over 100 million keys. And by multiplying it with 17,576, the possible orientation and arrangements of the scrambler, you are going to end up with this huge number, which is the number of keys Enigma Cipher has. But if you can rule out that we don't have a plug board anymore, since we just ruled out that the length of the chains doesn't depend on the plug board, it simply depends on scrambler arrangement and orientation, you simply have 17,000 keys remaining. And you might think that no one is going to sit down and check all 17,000 keys. Well, Marian and his team sat down, they checked all 17,000 keys, and they made a dictionary of the lengths of the chain. Maybe they found a lot of small chains one day and then a few big chains. They are going to go back to their dictionary, look in it, and they would be able to find the exact scrambler orientation and the exact arrangement that is used to encrypt the message. And finally, even though they don't know the plugboard setting, they're still going to be left with something we did previously by encrypting a message simply by substituting each letter with another letter. Remember that the plugboard is just changing letters to another letter, and we just learned that we can break it using frequency analysis. Therefore, now polished cryptanalysis can easily break this Enigma cipher using just a few minutes a day. However, this wasn't the end of their troubles. And well, fast forward to today, there's something I've built. If you're not interested in Python or programming, skip this part. This is not going to make any sense. But what I have made here is a simplified version of Enigma Cipher. I am going to send in any message simply by writing down my command and executing it, and this message is practically unbreakable. This is unbreakable because the wirings of my Enigma cipher, well, they are unknown to anyone who might be trying to break my cipher. And for another thing, you are not going to receive the duplicate keys you received with the German cipher. And that tells us something interesting. It tells us that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and a cipher is only as strong as its weakest operators. Enigma cipher wasn't broken because it was Enigma, it was broken because the humans who used it were foolish enough to make mistakes. And even after Germans removed that repetition, we were still able to break that cipher, not because of its weaknesses, but because we knew that we are going to receive some text which can always be decrypted to the same word. Take a weather report for example, we can find a weather report every morning and we just know that the first word is going to be weather, and we can go ahead and decrypt our cipher using that pattern. And those patterns are all created by humans. If we can strengthen that weakest link, which is us, our security can be unbreakable.